The federal government says a committee of community leaders will inform its long-awaited Black Justice Strategy. Ottawa committed to creating this strategy in the 2021 election campaign after advocacy groups and the United Nations pointed out systemic racism in Canada's criminal justice system.
And the work begins right away. Over the coming months, the steering group will help set up the consultations in Black communities across the country. They will also sit down with experts and community leaders. They will build on the good work already done in our communities and in the justice system. What they learn will inform the strategic advice they will provide us in the form of a final report.
Akwasi Owusu-Bempah is one of the members of the newly created steering group that will advise the government on this Black Justice Strategy. I spoke to him before the news of RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucky's retirement broke. Thanks for coming in, sir.
My pleasure.
How do you hope the justice system will function at the end of this process for Black Canadians?
In a nutshell, more justly.
Can you expand beyond the
nutshell? I certainly
nutshell,
can
please?
expand on that. So we've got a justice system that, for a long time has done what many people have wanted to do very effectively, which is punish people and push them to the margins of our society. And that comes with a host of problems. And unfortunately, we know that it, disproportionately impacts Black and Indigenous people. And we have an opportunity here, of course, to make a justice system that's more just and more fair for Black people in this country, and in many ways to ensure that they're treated with dignity, with respect, and with fairness as they're processed through the system, in the hopes that their lives are not unnecessarily upended, and not only the lives of individuals, but their families and, of course, their communities.
So I wonder if you could be a little bit more granular. Like, what are the biggest problems you see at the various intersection points with the justice system that have you describing it as unjust?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to recognize that, unfortunately, these issues actually arise before we even get to the justice system itself. Right. And this is one of the things that, we're going to struggle with as we move forward with our work, is that we're focusing on the justice system, but we need to look at, even neonatal health. We need to look at early childhood education, our education and our employment sectors, if we really wanted our justice system to be doing what we want it to do properly. We also need to recognize that the justice system itself is made up, of course, of, on the main, the police, the courts, and the correctional systems, and then there are also other institutions adjacent to that. And we've got the division between the federal government, the provinces, and the municipalities. Right. We know, you know that, we know, of course, that there are issues throughout the system. There are issues related to policing, from first contact through treatment during contact. There are issues in our court systems, which are perhaps a little less known, but we see them arise, whether that be with respect to bail, whether that be with respect to sentencing, and then, of course, within our correctional institutions as well. So we have a gross overrepresentation of Black people within not only our federal, but also our provincial correctional systems. And we know from the work, for example, of the Office of the Correctional Investigator, that Black people in federal corrections experience injustice within correctional settings. So, the work potentially could run the gamut. We need to consider the mandate of the agencies involved and the level of government as well. I think importantly, we have an opportunity here to build upon work that's been done before. Right. So, we're not starting out from zero here. There's been an immense amount of work that's been done by government commissions, by researchers, and by communities and individuals themselves. And we also want to, of course, create a solution here that's going to be mindful of the great diversity within this country. Diversity within the Black population itself, but also the regional diversity that exists, from Vancouver to Halifax, and our southern border, and up to the top of this country. Right.
Well, as a Newfoundlander, I got to remind you, it goes to St. John's. We got to get that in there. But you rightly point out jurisdiction, right, as a big thing, and a lot of people forget about that. And this is one of the challenges. So you're a federal steering committee, but it goes well beyond that, right? Like there's the municipal level, as you talk about, the provincial levels you talk about. What influence can this committee have at those levels if this is something to advise Justice Minister Olomide or whoever is in this job when you finish your work?
Well, there is a steering committee, and I'm just one member of that steering committee, and we will be consulting broadly with the public. And so I certainly don't want to get ahead of myself. But, the way in which I see this, there are certain things that the Department of Justice itself can do, and there are certain things that, the rest of the federal government can do. But it can also take the lead in certain areas. So the criminal code, of course, is within the remit of the Minister of Justice. But it can set a tone. It can, we can advise on what should happen in other sectors and other levels of government. And of course, there's also funding that's available through the federal government to the provinces and to municipalities to do work that we may think is suitable. And so those are, potential avenues to affect change.
Right, because so much of the initial points of contact, though, is going to be at the policing level, right? And that is municipal and that is provincial. So it's like, how given the jurisdictional divisions and this role, what obstacles do you foresee having to overcome to have an impact at that level?
Yeah, I think, when we think about where the largest concentrations of black people live in this country, they are in jurisdictions that would be policed by municipal police services as opposed to federal police. And so this is going to be an issue. And this is one that I don't think we have an easy answer to yet, and one that we will need to address, of course. I hope that we will be able to set recommendations that will pertain to our federal police service that may provide guidance for provincial and municipal police agencies to follow. So basically leading by example.
Right, a pace car. Okay, so I wonder now, this was, the pace of this was promised in the 2021 election, early 2022, we're just getting to this steering committee stage, and then 2024 is when you hope to have this report done. I mean, are you satisfied with the pace at which this is moving along, given you talked about the social determinants and the systemic issues that exist already? Are you happy with the way this is moving?
I've worked in and with governments long enough to know that things move at their own paces depending on what's happening and what issues arrive. So I'm not going to comment on, whether or not I'm happy with the pace. I'm happy we are at where we're at right now, and I'm confident that with the group that we have at the table and the work that we are going to set out to do, that we will be able to achieve substantial work in the time that we have, and the hopes is that we will get to the point of potentially implementation when we need to get there.
I mean, obviously this will go to the minister, will go to the cabinet, and they'll make the final decision on where this lands and how far it goes. So how much influence do you think your steering committee can have on what they actually do, or how much do you hope it will have on what they actually do?
I hope that we'll have significant influence. I've been in conversation with the minister's office and the bureaucratic side for some time on this. I know it is a priority. I know that there are a number of people around the table that have a lot of profile, that have pull in community and that have public profiles as well. And so I think, of course, we want to work within the systems that are set up to ensure that we get to where we want to get to, but there are other options should those not be sufficient.
You give me that nutshell answer off the top, that you want it to work more justly. If there is one big problem that you really want to attack and tackle in this process, is there one thing you can point to that could make a big difference right away?
For me, the simple problem is not just what the justice system does, but the reach of the justice system. So from my perspective, unfortunately at the moment, the justice system intervenes too much in the lives of people in this country, and particularly marginalized people. And so identifying ways to reduce the reach of the justice system, whether that be police courts or correctional agencies, into the lives of Canadians and certainly marginalized Canadians, would be that piece of work. And I'm not giving you a simple answer to your question. Nope. This is a complex issue.
Absolutely.
And so for me, it's really about reach. What justice intervention is warranted and necessary, and what is not. And we'll be trying to determine and figure out what work perhaps can be performed by agencies adjacent to the criminal justice system with the support, for example, of federal funding from the Department of Justice.
So like more mental health interventions, more social worker
exactly.
interventions, these sorts of things?
We got a lot of discussion around bail at the moment, right? So, there's a lot of controversy around bail. You look at our bail system, people who are out on bail need supports, right? If we don't want them to violate the terms of their release, if we want to ensure that they will show up for court and they won't, engage in either criminal behavior or behavior that would violate those terms, then they need structures around them. They need, educational supports. They may need kind of professional supports. They may need mental health supports and social supports generally. And so those are the very types of things, when we talk about those systems or institutions adjacent to the criminal justice system, it's exactly in those contexts.
Okay, it's important work. Will you come back when you get your report done? We can talk about it?
Happy to do so.
All right, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.